Word on the street. FisMaz Show. What's the word on the street? Like, who got the beats that be killing the game? Who's up on the screen? Who playing who? What's the score on the sheet? Fiso the Prince got him taking the seat. Got the legends giving us the 411. Fiso Maz from the 031. No hating sports and entertainment when we got it all and we the only ones. And after all that action, ever how we dripping high fashion. Drippy on some rich municipal stylists and soak up with passion. If it's giving us less, then we never settle. Make sure you pull up and bring all your medals. Sit back and relax, let's go. It's FisMaz bringing you the FisMaz Show. It's the FisMaz Show. It's the FisMaz Show. It's the FisMaz Show. It's the FisMaz Show.
Hello everyone, welcome to the FisMaz Show. I've got a special guest today because, well, we've had the end of the DStv Premiership, the Motsepe Foundation Championship, and it has been a dramatic finish to the season. So for me, I guess there's a few stories I wanted to touch on, but more importantly, having been in Cape Town recently, seeing the importance of a club like Cape Town Spurs and how the locals in Cape Town connect with it, I was inspired. And obviously my good friend Shaun Bartlett, unfortunately not able to get over the line there, massively disappointed at the end of that game. So yeah, I mean, it's been all happening in South African football, and I thought the perfect man would be Rob Delport to chat about not only the end of the season, but also to speak to him about I guess Cape Town and Cape Town Spurs and I guess football down there and what it means to everyone. So Rob, thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I see you nice and cozy there in Cape Town. It's a little bit warmer here in Johannesburg.
Yeah, it was a freezing night last night. I don't want to take anything. I just want to put more clothes on. Actually, it's been a really cold weekend. And a cold weekend after a very disappointing weekend week for Cape Town Spurs, where obviously on the last day just had to jump over that hurdle, and it proved a hurdle too far for Shaun and the boys. Only managing to get a draw in that last game, which meant obviously Polokwane pipped them at the race. And the second time that the club's been pipped at the race in 4 years, although technically that was Ajax Cape Town 3 years ago. So a lot has changed at the club. But yeah, it was a tough weekend for the Cape.
Yeah, tough weekend for the Cape, a tough weekend for Maruma Gallants as well, who have obviously dropped down to the first division or the Motsepe Foundation Championship. I guess a lot of people thought, with the type of football they played at the back end of the season, playing in the CAF Confed Cup and doing so well there, it might be a boost for Gallants to potentially survive the drop. But Chippa United, I said to a friend of mine, Chippa United always find a way to survive. And I think not a lot of people would have thought that they would have done so.
Yeah, I mean, that talk about heartbreak. I mean, as much, we say Spurs were heartbroken, but they still have a playoffs that they can get through and possibly even still get promoted. For Maruma Gallants, this week must have been such an emotional roller coaster. Obviously on Wednesday, playing in the semi-finals of the CAF Confederation Cup, potentially, reaching another final, and not another CAF final, but another final. I mean, this is a club that's technically only 3 years old, and they've been in 2 Nedbank Cup finals, winning one. And unfortunately, Younger was a step too far for them, having to overturn that 2-0 deficit. But then, just 4 days later, to be relegated.
They drop down, and bouncing back is tricky, especially if you don't do it pretty early on.
Let's look at Cape Town Spurs in this. I mean, it's 5 years ago that Ajax Cape Town got relegated controversially with the Tendai and Doro situation. First 2 seasons back as Ajax Cape Town, we're still Ajax Cape Town. I think they finished 4th. They didn't change much. They had a couple of the players who went down with them. The second season, things changed a little more. And I think that season still haunts them. Famously, Swallows pipped them by a goal difference of 1. And every time I speak to somebody at the club or a fan at the club, someone shows me a photo of how offside Swallows goals were. And it's, so it certainly still haunts them. But then, unfortunately, because of the coverage of the second tier, I also think that might be what South Africa remembers last. Because Cape Town Spurs have had a remarkable turnaround this season. Everybody talks about them losing out on the last day. Last year, on the last day, if they lost their final game, they were relegated from professional football. The year before that, they were almost relegated. They've gone from 14th to second with basically the same squad and a couple of old guys. Some of their young guys last season went through hell. They were, everyone, again, on last week when they were playing Tuks, I kept being reminded how, Spurs messed it up for Tuks last season, because Tuks were in the race for promotion. I don't think Spurs even thought about Tuks in that game last season, because had they allowed Tuks to win, Cape Town Spurs would be in the ABC Motsepe League. And I don't think people are kind of aware of that situation, that in 12 months, they've gone from one game away from relegation to one game away from winning the league. And, it's horrible that they tripped at the end, but you have to give credit, because that was Shaun Bartlett and these kids. And what really changed at Spurs this season was bringing in the guys like Granville Scott, Nazir Ali, and of course Clayton Daniels, who I think changed the club atmosphere a great deal by having, people who had been there and done that for the past 20 odd years. But it's, they now have the difficulty of trying to get back up still. They've got another chance, but it goes to show just how difficult it is when you get relegated. We saw Black Leopards. Black Leopards got relegated, I think, 3 years ago? And they're gone. We mentioned Maruma Gallants being relegated. The club that they technically were, Chakuma, is now no more. Chakuma has been around in so many different... if Chakuma was a business, you wouldn't know where their address was, because they've changed their address so many times. They were Milano United, then they sold that franchise and bought Wits. They sold that franchise and that became Maruma Gallants. Then they took over Royal AM as franchise when Royal AM bought Bloemfontein. It's very confusing for somebody who doesn't know South African football. But now Chakuma's gone as well. Technically, two clubs with the name Chakuma got relegated in one season in different leagues. It's a tough biz.
Look, it's a tough gig. It's a tough gig, unfortunately, and Cape Town Spurs, for me, I got to see firsthand, just how passionate people are in Aflo and in Cape Town about Cape Town Spurs. People came out in their numbers, and people were ready for a big party, Unfortunately, Tuks, spoiled that party, but, kudos to Tuks. They just simply stuck to what they came to do, and that was to perform till the very final whistle of the season, which you can all you can do is respect. But for me, I've been to Cape Town City games. I've been to watch football in Cape Town, but there seems to be a different sort of a connection with Spurs. And Shaun spoke about it to me before the game off air about just how much it means to Cape Town, and as a son of Cape Town, you look at Nassif Morris also being on the bench with him, and you look at all that connection with Cape Town and the sort of development and opportunities that young players from Cape Town have gotten. It's more than football, isn't it?
Well, yeah. I'm kind of like their third technical staff member, Calvin Marlin. I'm a Kabaka boy like Calvin, who's where Cape Town's become our second home. And when I started in journalism full time, Ajax Cape Town, formerly who are obviously what Spurs were known at, were the first club that I dealt with directly. And I thought, wow, South African football clubs are actually in a good situation. I didn't realize that their facilities were rare. I didn't realize at first that their academy was rare. if we had 25 clubs like Cape Town Spurs or Ajax Cape Town in South African football would be very healthy. You must remember this is a club that I know people talk about maybe they don't pay enough in the first team and all of that, but this is a club that actually has proper facilities, that has an under 12, under 14, under 16, under 18 team, that employs accountants, that employs groundsmen, and obviously that all changed slightly when they got relegated, but they've also still maintained a lot of that, and it is still remains. I think every city almost needs something to aim for young kids, and for a very long time that academy was where kids in Cape Town aimed to be. It was, a place where you could actually get developed. Obviously, they had all the Dutch coaches who came, so you also learned a wider range of football. That's obviously changed. But one of the things that has been quite impressive for me to see is that they didn't throw all of that away. Because it would have been very easy to say, okay, we've been relegated, let's get rid of the under 12, under 14s, and we'll go to the under 16s only, or under 19s only. But, that they've actually maintained those structures. And I really, it's also just good for, they're a club that's also just good for South African football because the pathway is there. Where I'm talking about, a club where those under 12 kids, if they're good enough, are actually going to end up in the first team. As much as it could be a little concerning in a big picture thing when you look at the national under 23 team, and you see that a third to a quarter of the players in the national under 23 team is coming from a second tier outfit. But that's because that second tier outfit is still developing players in a better way than many other clubs. This is probably the only club in the Motsepe Foundation Championship who's never even had to worry about the under 23 rule, because I think every squad has 8 to 12 under 23 players in it, and it's a twofold thing from someone like me who's quite a big patriot, and I want to see our South African footballers progress to the highest level. I want Cape Town Spurs in the top tier because I want those young players, the Lincoln Fafers, Chumani Butsakas, the Rushwan Dortleys, the Ashley Cupidos, the Asavela Velabais, the Kayam Fakanis, the Botamelo Radiopanis. I want these guys to be testing themselves at a higher level so that they can improve. Because with all due respect to some of the Motsepe Foundation sides, a player is going to get a lot better playing against Sundowns, Pirates and Chiefs and SuperSport and these kinds of clubs than they are against Motsepe sides. And that's my concern from the thing is that I think South African football actually needs this team in the top tier. And I want all clubs to be like that.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it any better myself with regards to, I guess, what it means to the people of Cape Town and what Cape Town Spurs symbolizes for what potentially we could be doing better as a footballing nation. I was with my friend Stanton Lewis down in Cape Town, and he was bitterly disappointed and he spoke to me about just what the club meant for him as a young man, in terms of the opportunities and making his debut as a teenager. And he spoke to me about that side that they had with Serrero, with Malulega, with under Fopedehan, an incredible team. And to think a few years later that they would be competing in the first division. If you told me that at that time, I would have said you crazy, But the game of football changes so quickly, and it's unfortunate. And no doubt anyone who's listening to this or watching this, they'll be asking themselves, can they come back? Can they do it in the playoffs? Can they lift themselves up? And I hate making overseas examples about local football, but I was listening to Rio Ferdinand speaking the other day, and he spoke about how, in a change room, you need players that understand highs and lows. And And he spoke about, he was referring to Arsenal and how sometimes they'd almost go too high and then almost go too low. And sometimes you get a fighting draw at Southampton and you think to yourself, oh, we've dropped 2 points. And he said a similar situation happens to him. He's just joined United, doesn't quite know how, a run-in goes with regards to winning titles. And he says he's in the shower, he's upset. Roy Keane and Gary Neville come in and they say, that's a great point. It's a great point away from home. All of a sudden, it lifts his spirits. Will Clayton Daniels, Granwell Scott, Nazir Ali, will they be crucial in lifting the spirits of this group and say, young men, pick yourselves up. Let's go again. We've been there. We've done it. We know how to do this. Will that experience, come to the fore?
It already is. I actually went and visited them on Friday at Ikamfa because they had a few days off after the disappointing draw against Tuks, and then resumed training now because obviously their season isn't over. They resumed on Friday, so I went to see them. And I've always, as much as I love covering this game, I love also observing human beings. I'm a writer first, and then a football writer. And before I wrote about football, I wrote about people, and I was quite amazed, actually, how good the energy was considering what had happened. Listen, I first of all, to go back to the game that happened, they labored to a 1-1 draw. Things did not go their way in the game. Spurs they've tried to play the way they were playing the whole season, which I think a lot of people hadn't seen as well. So you didn't know what to, the viewers at home might not have known what to expect. But I watched a game where I watched their momentum being broken a lot. They never quite got their foot on the pedal. And then things started not going their way. They labored to a draw, but they know that it was in their hands. But what I was quite amazed with going to the training was seeing how positive they were. I'll use little Liam Byrne as an example. Now Liam is somebody who's been at that club, I think, since he was 9 or 10. So he watched his big brothers get relegated. Now he's part of that first team. But when he walked past me after training, I was like, I gave him that sad look, like, oh, sorry about what happened. And he was like, no, dude, now we get to play more football. And that's a great, that's just a great attitude to have. There was no, oh man, now we've got to struggle through the playoffs. It was like, I'm going to get to kick the ball more. And sometimes this is something that I sometimes think with South African footballers. I watch them and I interact with them and I think, man, you guys don't love this game enough. You don't want to play. Sometimes I feel like for some people, it's the love of the game has been knocked out of them a bit and it's become more work. And, when training ends, they all want to rush off. And I was very pleased to see that positivity is in the squad, from the youngest guys right through to the oldest guys. The first person who smiled at me was Clayton, who has been immense for this team. And it's something that I think, again, the mentor, every footballer, every sport, I'm the youngest of 4 boys. Okay. So I remember as a kid making mistakes on a field and my brother smacking me on the head and then patting me on the back. And I think, I learned a lot in that kind of environment. And I think we kind of have been missing those key club types of mentors like that. And I think Cape Town Spurs in particular, I think even if you go back to the last few seasons of Ajax Cape Town, they had senior players, but they weren't necessarily senior club players. Now, Clayton Daniels, Nazir Ali, and Granwell, who unfortunately has had lots of injuries this season, they are Liam Byrne. They are Faiz Abrahams. They are Asanela Velabai. They are Chumani Butsaka 20 years ago. So they they've gone through a similar experience, and they're the perfect guys to guide these young men. And it's why you've seen a team, again, I know that Spurs should have been better last season, but it's also why you've seen a team go from a game away from being relegated to a game away from winning the title. And listen, the playoffs are not easy for the second tier teams, but it's always still in your hands. And if I look at from Spurs' point of view, they, and kind of semi from Kazrick's point of view, a lot is going to depend on that first game next Sunday. They play Kazrick away. A draw helps maybe both teams, maybe better for Spurs, but a good result there can change everything. Because, technically you can win those playoffs before your final game. And Spurs' final game is away against Maritzburg United. So, if they want to get in the playoffs, they have to target that first away game, and they have to target their two back-to-back home matches against Kazrick and then Maritzburg, and show that they're potentially a top flight team. Now people will say, yeah, the rules change in the playoffs. There's no more under 23s. Well, like I said to you earlier, that doesn't affect Spurs. If Spurs were playing in the DStv Premiership right now, they would have 8 to 12 under 23s in their squad. And they would be some of the best under 23s in the country, as we see by their selection for the national under 23 team. So, yes, the playoffs are going to be difficult. Yes, they've got to lift themselves up after last Sunday. But they also have to remember that they didn't lose. It's not like Tucks beat them. They didn't get over the finish line, and they still have a chance to get over it again. Can they? Yes. Are Maritzburg favorites? Yes. But I also have no idea what to expect from Maritzburg. Because to be honest with you, I look at that Maritzburg squad and I'm like, why are you in the bottom 4? Why are you in the bottom 5? I actually think it's a squad that could be potentially challenging for the top 8. So maybe there's something going on there that Spurs can actually take advantage of, or Kazrick can take advantage of, because we're just suddenly expecting Maritzburg to win games, which has been a struggle for them all season. And winning is a habit. Just for a slight sideline, and why Cape Town Spurs are where they are, is I was speaking to the CEO. And I said, I'm a silver lining in every cloud. And one of the best things that's happened to this Cape Town outfit about being in the Motsepe Foundation Championship is they learned to play on the road. Because for the last 4 or 5 seasons, Ajax Cape Town had an awful record away. I think there was one season, I don't even think they won on the road, or they won once. But suddenly having to travel to Thohoyandou, to Kimberley, to somewhere in the Mpumalanga where they've never been before, or to the north. Suddenly a trip to Moses Mabhida or to a trip to Harry Gwala must sound like a holiday, because they've had to learn the hard way about winning on the road. And they've got some really good results in the Motsepe Foundation Championship that I don't think that old Ajax Cape Town would have got, because they weren't very good travelers. And again, sometimes you've got to take those lessons. And suddenly playing away at Harry Gwala must actually sound quite exciting for them, because it's the game that could decide things. That final game, of course. Again, like I said to you, it all is going to depend on those first three fixtures. And I'm scared to write Kazrick off. Kazrick are an interesting team. This is their first technical year as a professional side. They've got some very good players that came from Free State. So and they've kept a bit of a core of Free State stars. But Kazrick, I also met for the first time 4 years ago. 5 years ago, I think, when they actually reached the ABC Motsepe playoffs. And this is the old Palmeiras, Ian Palmer's team, the late Ian Palmer. And when they came to the ABC Motsepe playoffs, strangely enough, with Hungry Lions, and neither of them got promoted that season. But those were the two teams that impressed me the most, because they looked like little professional teams. And it was very nice to see how Kazrick went about their season, because I think what we need more of are professional teams, not franchises. Oh, no, I would love to see more clubs, but that takes a while. When I say clubs, I mean a place where you can go to when there's no football. Whether there's a squash court or a tennis court or a five-a-side court or a restaurant. I would love to see more of those kinds of clubs, but we have teams in South Africa for the most part. But Kazrick were a very professional outfit in their first season, and that if those are the new franchises that come into South African football, I don't have as much a problem with the buying and selling. Unfortunately, they're not the common one. But I think it's actually going to be. You know what? I mean, I'm like I said to you, I'm a little bit of a patriot, so I support South Africans, and this weekend was very hard for me as well. Watching Sundowns exit the CAF Champions League in the semi-finals. Unfortunately, I do think the best team in Africa this year is not going to win the tournament. Watching Sundowns this season was uplifting, and to see the unbeaten team not reach the final is sad. I really do believe that the best team won't win the CAF Champions League this season. Unfortunately, it's not always about the best team, and we've seen that in some of the other results. It's about the experience. It's about everything like that. And so, yeah, I mean, Sundowns not making it is disappointing. But what I meant with that is that I obviously want to see an upliftment of South African football. So a team like Kazrick, I think, is actually quite good for our league. Also, it's good for a different region. One of the things that we've seen in the Motsepe Foundation, perhaps more than the DStv Premiership, is that people get very excited when there's a lot of clubs in one area in a team, like what we saw with Limpopo this season. Everyone was like, oh, we've got so many clubs. It's going to be awesome. And what happens is 2 of them get relegated and 1 of them gets promoted. And the problem is they cancel each other out. We had this in Cape Town a few years ago when we had 5 or 6 clubs in the second tier, and I think it was Milano and All Stars were chasing at the top, but they lost to Santos, who are about to be relegated, because derbies are a different kettle of fish completely. So I like seeing football spread around. I like seeing Hungry Lions in the Northern Cape. I would love to see, as an Eastern Cape boy, I would love to see another Eastern Cape side show up. And so Kazrick, I think, is good for our football. These playoffs are going to be a very interesting little competition to watch. Because do we want to lose Maritzburg? No. Do we want these other teams to get promoted? Yes. But there's only one spot. And it gets very again, I don't necessarily have badge loyalty. I was a PE boy who didn't have a club for most of my life, so the closest I had was Mthatha Bushbucks. They vanished. So I've been hurt many times by clubs disappearing and things like that. But I have a strong human connection with a lot of different footballers, and all 3 of these clubs have players who I have human connections with, or coaches I have human connections with. So I want to see them all succeed, which is difficult. Obviously, I will be biased towards the Western Cape because I've been here since the 90s. And ideally, I would love to see Cape Town Spurs get back up. They were so close, but now perhaps is even a bigger test for them. A bigger test, because if they actually get through the playoffs, whoever gets through these playoffs, I don't think we'll get relegated next season. All 3 of these teams, I think, are quite capable of fighting for at least a top 10 place. in the DStv Premiership with their current squads. So I'm very interested to see what happens next season. But obviously, we have to get through these playoffs first. Are they going to challenge our mighty Sundowns? No. But that's a different story. You know, what we have seen over the past 2-3 years with Sundowns is they've raised their competitor level. You know, they are competing with Wydad. They are competing with Al Ahly. What we actually need our other clubs to start doing is also competing with those teams. You know, so let's see what Pirates do in the Champions League this season. Because I think if they can raise their game to compete with those kinds of teams, then they will compete with Sundowns in the Premiership. I think this is the thing, is you're only as good as who you're playing against, which goes back to why I want Cape Town Spurs and those young players to be playing at a higher level, because those guys will only improve by playing against stronger teams. You know, we are also a funny country, South Africa. You know, whether you look at all our sports, we are semi-chameleon sports people. We can compete with the best, but we compete with the worst as well. You know, sometimes we lower our levels to depending on who we're competing against, which I think has been a Bafana problem. You know, where like I always use the All Blacks and the Springboks as an example, and why I'm loving the current generation of Springboks is that the All Blacks used to beat a minnow 120-0, 123, and the Springboks used to beat that same team 21-3 or 33, but be as dominant, but not knock them down. And I think in South African terms, we've done that a bit, maybe because of competing too much in the CASAFA leagues or things like that. You know, we're a chameleon. We suddenly can compete against Egypt and Ghana, or in those extreme cases, the Spains, or the 20 years ago, the Frances. You know, we could actually compete with them, but we also compete with Mauritania and the Seychelles. And you know, and we lower our level almost when we're playing against those sides, and that is something like I think Sundowns has started to show, is that if you're playing against somebody who's not as good as you, you have to hurt them. And I think that consistency in performance is what has taken Sundowns to that next level. And that's what I want to see from 32 professional clubs. I mean, it would be amazing to see proper competitive football all the time at a higher level, and having all these teams, you know, like you know, the one thing about watching a lot of second tier football, a lot of people say, Rob, how can you go watch that? You know, how can you go watch? Because they'll go watch an NFD game or a Motsepe Foundation Championship game, and it's not that good. But the thing is that sometimes it actually is too. You know, there's some games I've watched in the Motsepe Foundation Championship that have been as good, if not more entertaining, than the DStv Premiership sides, because I think you'll see there's more goals scored in the Motsepe Foundation Championship this season, albeit not by much. It's like five goals more scored in the second tier. But you know, I want all our football standards to raise. And for that to happen, our 32nd best club needs to be better. You know, our first club, Sundowns, are clearly at a different level. Now we need the other 31 to step up. And yeah, I mean, you know, if I look at the Motsepe Foundation Championship, I think comparing it to 5-6 years ago, I think it is more competitive. I think fewer teams are there just to make up numbers. You know, we used to have a couple of teams that were in the NFD for a decade and were never going to get promoted and never going to get relegated. They were just there to make up the numbers. Now, every single one of those teams is competing. I mean, the irony was that the team that was 16th, Black Leopards, at one point a couple of months ago, they were still talking about maybe we can reach the playoffs. even though they were lost, because they were still competing for that. I think Chakuma really thought that maybe their fortunes would change when they relocated to Bloemfontein. And they were still targeting, maybe we can still reach that point. And I think this is the nice thing about watching stuff in the second tier at the moment, is all of those teams are actually there to compete. I wish we could have that in the DSTV Premiership completely. I think some teams, we're seeing it more and more and more, which is why some of the former big teams struggle more. Because, I mean, I even think of last season with someone in my geographical direction. I think Cape Town City finishing second was as much because of the other competition than them achieving it. It's not, they finished second because of the competition around them knocking each other out. I think, if I recall, they were in second position and other teams could have taken their place, but they were busy competing. The competition level was so high amongst the others that they canceled each other out. And a few years ago, like, I'm old, so I remember when there were really 3 teams competing. Now, there are no longer 3 teams competing. There are 7 teams competing or 8 teams competing. You can't go into a Sekhukhune versus Pirates game like we're going to see in the Nedbank Cup final and just say, oh, it's Pirates Cup. You can't say that anymore, because talent is also a little, as much as everyone says Sundowns is hoarding all the talent, the other clubs have also spread talent around a lot more. Sekhukhune is 3 years old. They've got Kamogelo Makocho. They've got Sibusiso Vilakazi. They've got Daniel Cardoso and Edwin Gima and Victor Swallow and Chekofatso Mabasa. They've got some really good players who could be playing at any of these top clubs. That is something that's nice to see. But it's also it's good to see it spread around, but it does mean there's more competition. Again, I don't like to harp on about Sundowns, but I find myself defending them a lot of the time because, again, like with the situation with Spurs, where people only remember 3 years ago, they only, it was like they remembered them missing out, and then they remember them missing out again now, but they didn't see the struggles between that. Sundowns, we focus on Ronwin Williams and Tebogo Mokoena as these huge, big signings. But I think Neo Mayema, Kulisa Mudau, these guys, other teams could have signed them. They weren't coming from glamorous teams. They weren't coming from shining and being superstars at Black Leopards or Bloemfontein Celtic. They were well-profiled players who Sundowns brought in. So we must also remember that Sundowns' success comes down to, yes, they have the ability to sign who they want or who they target, but they're targeting the right players. They're actually targeting for profile. It's I think something that other clubs can learn from. You see it at some of the smaller clubs have done profile signing incredibly well. I think someone like Stellenbosch, who I know you've watched quite a lot of, that's an impressive club, considering they also have modest roots. Again, I know everyone says, yeah, but they're owned by Johan Rupert. Well, yes and no. They're owned by the Stellenbosch Academy of Sport, which is owned by Remgro, which is owned by Johan Rupert. So, but I don't think Mr. Rupert has thrown money at them. I think they've actually created a very strong foundation, and we're seeing progress. They won the DSTV Disky Challenge last season, and the real victory though is seeing those Disky Challenge players already in the first team.
Yeah.
That's the success of what's happening at that club. And I think it's a lot to do with, when players are coming through your development, they're coming through in the profile that you want. And I think that's something that all our clubs need to learn a little bit about, is, sign the right players for your team, not based on necessarily then, again, if somebody scores 20 goals, I see everybody wants them. But are they going to score 20 goals for your team? And I think that's where like Sundowns has got it right. If I look through their squad, there are holes in their squad still, but their players, everybody suits the way Sundowns plays. And I think, what I would like to see with all of these clubs is that kind of approach to football. And the easiest way is the way that Cape Town Spurs do it. Well, the easiest and most time consuming. If you want apples, sometimes you can go to the shop and buy them, but you don't know what you're getting. But if you plant the tree and you know the seed, you know what apple is going to come off. And that is kind of what I would like to see more of our clubs do. And yeah, so going into these playoffs, you have three very different clubs as well. Obviously, Kasrick new, but it seems like they kind of know they created a team around the players they have, which is nice to see. Maritzburg, I look at that squad and I think to myself, maybe they haven't quite found their plan, because the players are good. There's a lot of players there that I expect more from, and they've been a little disappointing. So maybe that's Fadlu's thing still, is finding the correct plan for them. Spurs are, they're still a work in progress. Even like I've mentioned it a few times that they were fighting relegation last season, but even 6-7 months ago, they were 9th in the table, and they had to play catch up. And it's been a bit of a couple of trips and falls along the way, but they're a work in progress. And I just want to see that progress actually happen. I want to see where that team is going. So I'm actually kind of glad they've got 4 more games, because I think maybe in these 4 games we get to see the identity of Spurs. But maybe it's not their season this year. Maybe it is. It's again. I went into that last game really believing that they could do it, because I'd watched them win 12 or 14 games at home this season before that. But the things that had worked for them throughout the season at home didn't work for them on Sunday. Like I said to you right at the beginning, their momentum just never got going. I know that Shaun wasn't very happy with the officiating. Sometimes we only judge officiating when a penalty is not given, or a player's booked, or a player's not booked. But sometimes officiating can affect a game when fouls are going against you when you're starting the build-up. We only sometimes, again, this is I don't know if it's a South African thing or just an emotional football fan thing. We sometimes only see the end of a move. We're like, oh man, they buggered that up. But you don't realize they buggered it up because somebody cut them at the beginning. If you make one pass and the whistle goes, everybody else is out of position. And then you've got to start again. And I kind of felt like that's what happened in their game, that their momentum just never got going. Hopefully it gets going in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how those do go. Hopefully I'll come down and cover a game or two down in the Cape. But I mean, for me, it's a great story. And I hope that it's got a happy ending for Cape Town Spurs, because they're such a vital cog in South African football. But yeah, I guess time will tell, Rob. Time will tell if they can get over the line. Because I definitely do think that more football at the Athlone Stadium or wherever Cape Town Spurs would play in the top flight would not be a bad thing. Not because I love Cape Town, but just purely for South African football,
Yeah, 100%. My biggest concern if they do get promoted is a semi-selfish one, and something that I hope other journalists start doing. I love covering all football, and unfortunately, whether it be because of our bosses, whether it be because of demand from supporters or demand from readers. The Motsepe Foundation Championship is not very well covered. Okay, my biggest concern of Cape Town Spurs actually getting promoted is that the Western Cape might not have a Motsepe Foundation team at all next season if they do. And I feel like sometimes I'm maybe 15-20% of national NFT coverage. And with no team coming here, I don't know who's going to be covering it around the country. I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep track, apart from the odd televised game. And it actually is a worry for me, because like it used to be even better, because we did have 3, 4, 5 Cape Town teams. So I would get to see all these signs. Sometimes now I'm a little surprised by some of the teams because I only get to see them once. Like, for example, let's just take the champions. I only saw Polokwane City visit Cape Town once. And the day I saw them, they were terrible. Duncan Achisa even said after the game, he said he didn't even recognize his team. I think Spurs won comfortably. So now I can only judge Polokwane City basically from my eyes from their one performance. So I'm surprised they won based on that, but maybe if I'd seen them 4 times, I'd be able to say, oh, wow, yeah, pulling Marema was brilliant. Now I've just got to judge by what I see on a tweet or on a website, and it is a problem that I've always had, is that, again, maybe I'm too socialist, but these are 16 professional clubs, and I would love to see more coverage. I'd love to see more young journalists taking advantage of covering the Motsepe Foundation Championship. For most of the season, even at Spurs games, there were maybe 2 or 3 journalists on average at every game. And then that final game, there were like 20, in the media box. And I kept wondering, where have these people been all year? Where, you've come to eat the cake. And then when the cake doesn't get served, you're like, man, one of these Spurs guys. But you haven't been watching them, So it's something that I really do hope from thankfully, we have the Motsepe Foundation Championship show every week. But again, we only see highlights in that show. We don't see lowlights. And sometimes you watch a highlight reel and you're watching a player and he scores a goal. You think, wow, man, this guy's brilliant. But you didn't see the 27 misses he made in the game. You don't see the lowlights. And as much as we love the heights, football is also about the lows. Football is also about the emotions that followed at Athlone on that game when they didn't make it. Football is football is about it's like life. There's so much to smile about, but there's so much to cry about. And and every year we get to experience the emotions in a new way. One team can be challenging for the league and they can be threatening with relegation the following season. One team can win a cup final, reach another cup final, go all the way to the semi-finals of the CAF Confederation Cup, and 4 days later get relegated. It's a roller coaster ride. I'm very glad I'm covering it and not on that ride, because I'm just watching the roller coaster. Imagine, as much as we can talk about this, imagine what it actually feels like in those dressing rooms. Imagine what it feels like in Sundown's dressing room yesterday, or Spurs dressing room last week, or Gallant's dressing room yesterday.
Well, we didn't see what felt like in the Spurs change room, but we got a sense. For me, a lot of people may have looked at that and said, yeah, bang out of order, or whatever the case may have been, to approach the referees in that manner. But I saw a guy who was desperate to go up. I saw a guy whose dream was shattered. And I saw a guy who this means so much to him. That's what I saw. I mean,
that's Alexi, the CEO.
Yeah, I meant Alexi.
Now, what you see, this is the thing again, and this goes back to my media coverage as well, is those emotions that Alexi was showing was not just about those 90 minutes. You know, whether we like it or not, or whether it's true or not, and we can't prove it because unfortunately we don't bug dressing rooms, we don't have all the proof. There are shenanigans that happen in these lower leagues. I've watched games before where I have no idea if anybody knew the rules, including the officials, because I thought I knew the rules, and then I'd watch a game and I'd be like, what on earth was that call for? And it's not all about that particular game. I think with Alexi, I think they've had a few moments this season where they felt that things are not going their way, and I think that is the reason why I would love to see more coverage, and I would love to see more honesty in situations like that. I'd love to see more accountability in situations like that. You know, when there are accusations made by coaches on television, or insinuations rather than accusations, maybe we need to actually just have a look. You know, again, conspiracies and all of this, sometimes they're absolute nonsense. But sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire, you know, and I like to know the truth. I'm a little maybe too honest. I always believe that fair play should win, but I've also seen fair play not win. I mean, we live in Africa, for Pete's sake. We saw what happened with Mark Fish and those guys in Congo all those years ago. We see lasers shined in people's eyes all the time. We saw yesterday, even the Morocco, the Wydad coach say, you know, maybe, you know, your fans kind of helps us. You know, we saw how all of these influences can affect the bigger picture. What is the solution? I don't know. Except for responsibility and accountability. And I do think that throughout our football, we've allowed situations to happen that maybe shouldn't happen. I always use the driving analogy. You know, if there's no one in the road, no one tells you not to speed or wear your seatbelt if you're the only car in the road. I think we've allowed those kinds of things to happen, and we need to be stronger. I don't know what the solution is. I don't know if it's the professionalism of referees to make them accountable. I don't know if it goes back to when just the PSL creating stricter rules, making it harder for certain things to happen. I don't know what the solutions are, but I do think that those kinds of things, those conspiracies and the emotions of the CEO acting like that, is not about one fixture. It's an accumulation. We mentioned the Swallows winning promotion. You know, people just celebrated Swallows winning promotion. I guarantee you there was no one in Cape Town celebrating a promotion by a goal difference when we all on television saw two players, not 10 centimeters offsides, a meter offsides. You know, there was no one in Cape Town celebrating that, and there was no accountability, you know, and that was, you know, imagine that. I didn't even speak to the guys after that. I mean, directly, because they were in the bubble, remember? So there was no one here. So we couldn't experience those emotions. There was no Alexi running on the field. There was none of that. We just said, oh, okay, Swallows are promoted. But there should be accountability. If there was VAR, we wouldn't even be talking about Spurs in the playoffs now. If there was VAR back then, Swallows wouldn't have been promoted. It's as simple as that, because, you know, and also, with all due respect, that those playoffs were also, for me, a farce, because Chakuma was in those playoffs, and Chakuma had already bought Bidvest Wits, you know, so they were already up in, you know, there's all these little things that, whether or not there's anything to it or not, we don't know, but it certainly gets you the conspiracy theorists talking. I mean, It really is. I mean, we all know Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin went to the moon, but still, what, 60 years later, there's still people who will go, no, 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 it was all fake. And there are people who really believe that. You know, this is the conspiracy. We just had COVID, for Pete's sake. We saw a billion conspiracies, and whether they're true or not, you know, it's something that I would love to see wiped away from our football. No more conspiracies.
No, absolutely, Rob. I mean, I think we could talk football for 2 days straight.
I never stop talking.
No, I mean, I love it. You know,
I talk and sleep.
I mean, I had a chat with Farouk Khan yesterday. We were tired as hell when we arrived in Gqeberha, but when we started talking football, we were both alive and we were both. And next thing I didn't need to take a nap anymore. But it's passion for the game. But I really appreciate your time, Rob. I hope I can tap into you in the future, and hopefully, you know, for Cape Town Spurs fans and for residents of Cape Town, we could have a follow-up where maybe it's a victorious one for Cape Town City. But I know fans of Maritzburg, fans of Keswick, they may want something else. So it should be interesting nonetheless.
This is the beauty of sport, is that for everybody's misery, there's somebody's happiness. You know, I've been through so many emotions with so many teams, good and bad, and it's something that I always. Being empathetic is a very good thing in those situations, because I will be suffering with a team, and then I'll also be celebrating with another team, because that is it is the beauty of sport. There are highs and there are lows, and they're different for everybody. Again, I must probably sounded a little schizophrenic, because yes, I want Spurs up, but damn, I wouldn't mind if Keswick made it. And whoa, I don't want to lose Maritzburg. You know, so it's the beauty of sport. But also the beauty of sport is that you get another opportunity. I think the one thing that I would love to see, though, like I've hit, is just that everybody gets a fair opportunity. Again, we don't know. You know, I just would like to see things on a fair play. You know, fair play. It's a big thing with FIFA. I would love to see that always applied, so we don't even have conspiracies. We don't have those situations. And hopefully that is the next step in South African football, is, you know, taking us to that next level with regard to that. And that's not just to do with on the field. I'm talking about fair play across the board. Fair play that, you know, salaries get paid. You know, that everybody, you know, whether we like, you know, if I'm an employee, I'm expecting my payment on the 28th of every month, I must get my salary on the 28th of every month. If I'm owed bonuses, I must get those bonuses. If I have a contract that says 3 years, you can't come to me in December and say, hey man, let's pay you 3 months and you leave. That, all of those sorts of things, you know, that's all to do with fair play. You know, we're going to have 2 new Motsepe Foundation teams in less than a month from the ABC Motsepe leagues. And let's hope that those teams are good foundations as well. That's another, you know, we talk about conspiracies in the professional league. Let's not even start down there, because I've heard more, you know, it's crazy what happens down there.
Nah, Rob, I mean, yeah, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. And I guess we'll keep covering all those stories and trying to tick off those conspiracies, or rather scratch them off one by one.
Yeah, let's get rid of them.
Yeah, no, but thank you, Rob. Out of time, unfortunately. Again, really appreciate your time. Massively appreciative of all the knowledge you shared with us today. And yeah, may the best team win in the playoffs. And yeah, we're looking forward to a great season next season.
Thanks, Fiso. Have a good one.